We're checking back in with UND, a little different topic. Some fun things planned for Black History Month, and joining us today, we are checking in with Tamba Bailey Tamba Cooey, Assistant Professor of Education, Health, and Behavior at UND. Also, the co-chair of the UND Task Force on Diversity and Inclusion. Thank you so much for joining us today on North Dakota Today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, I just want to start with the fact that I know our producer was very excited that I was visiting with you today and said you have to ask him about inviting the exonerated 5 and the turnout just exceeding expectations. So that's something that happened last year. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, last year, some colleagues and I, we were really thinking about having a program where students, faculty, and staff could really have a more intimate way of interacting with a couple of the members from the exonerated 5. And so we were able to bring them to campus for a couple different events. They talked to students, faculty, and staff in the College of Education and Human Development, and then also a larger university event that took place in the Chester Fritz Auditorium where there were over 1,000 people in attendance. It was a really great moderated conversation. And so I think it was a real positive experience for the university and a way for, again, an intimate understanding of their experiences for Yusef Salaam and Raymond Santana. So it was a really great event.
Well, it sounds like it was a big hit as well, and an incredible turnout. So congratulations to you on that. Let's talk about what's happening this month. What is planned for UND's campus?
Sure. Well, I first want to say that Black History Month is a really important experience. John Henry Clark, a Black historian, really talked about using Black history as a means of locating oneself within the compass of the world history. And so for Black History Month, it's important then to understand the humanity, the persistence, the resilience within the Black community. And so at UND, I think there are a number of initiatives. One of the first things I'll say is the Black Student Association just last week held a forum on the impact of COVID within the Black community. And so we had a couple medical doctors and epidemiologists. We also had the director of the UND Student Health Center. And so they were able to really talk about what does it look like within Black community, what in terms of the response to COVID, and particularly relates to the vaccines and how that plays a role within Black community in terms of addressing COVID. So the Black Student Association did that. Also at the university, through UND today, the university has really been highlighting some of the Black alum and some of the really important work they've done. And then the the library has also put together a virtual exhibit as it relates to Black history and civil rights. And so they identified some literature, some books, some texts where people could actually check those things out, but they could have a first contact of that information through the website for the university. So there are a number of things that are happening on campus that are really attempting to highlight the importance of Black History Month and its importance for UND.
Do you mind sharing some of the people who have inspired you in your life and career?
Sure. Yeah, one of the first people I'll say is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And people talk about Dr. King often, but what I'll say is Dr. King in his writings really talked about this idea of radicalism, being an extremist for love and justice. And I think if you read Dr. King's writings, you really see that he was a radical who really talked about how do we move to a more just society. I think a couple other people, Joseph White, who is a Black psychologist, he's really seen as the godfather of Black psychology. He's really inspired my work in really thinking about the Black experience. In 1970, he published an article in Ebony magazine because he wanted to get, connect with Black people all across the United States. And it had a really profound impact as we start thinking about Black psychology. And then finally, Rosalind Pellis is a human and civil rights activist. And she started her activism at the age of 13 years old, first arrested at 14, really trying to fight against, at that time, segregation and inhumane practices. One of the things that she's talked about is her father always said, if you see something wrong, you should do something about it. And so you see that in her activism, even up until she's now in her early 70s. And just a few years ago, she was arrested for praying at the Supreme Court. And so her activism continues to this day. And so those have been some of the folks who really inspired me in some of my work.
Well, you guys are doing great things on the UND campus. We've run out of time, but I know you're also very involved in the task force on diversity and inclusion that was formed and moving forward and has lots of things planned for the future as well. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up here on North Dakota Today, we're going to be checking in with local nonprofit Cat's Cradle ahead of Giving Hearts Day this Thursday.